Okay, so I've managed to come up with a way to record both the DM screen and the player screen simultaneously. And as a result, what I want to do is show a brief overview of what I find as a comfortable layout for where all of the various windows open up before we actually start with the physical campaign. So one thing that I will note is I am recording both the player and the DM screens simultaneously. So the conversation will be in sync pretty much between the two of them. So there may be a point where I refer to the player screen or the DM screen from one or the other. And you may have to pop open that video just to have a look. So going forward with the rest of this tutorial series, I will be doing the recording simultaneously and making note that this is the DM's point of view or this is the player's point of view as part of the title of the screen. So you can theoretically skip the various videos as you go forward. Okay, so let's get started. Now, on the DM side, as you can see, I've got an extra wide screen, so I apologize if this isn't necessarily showing up overly clearly on your screen, but I wanted to show you the full breadth of what my view actually looks like. So starting on the left, we have the chat box with the characters, the modifier options, and the dice here. Now, typically what I do, and I've left these here intentionally because I want to show you how they have to be moved later. I typically put them here, and the reason I do that is because I like to have them close to the actual combat map and combat encounter so that I don't have to go overly far to get at these things. I then place the character sheets here. And the reason I do that is for a quick reference. I may want to drag and drop an item from a character, the party sheet, onto a character, or vice versa. And it makes it nice and convenient because I can just quickly switch over to the inventory tab here, click over to the inventory of a particular character, and then drag something over. And I apologize if things are a little laggy. I am recording two things, so there may be a little bit of delay as the windows pop open. Down here, I will have things like quest notes, encounter notes, things like that. That allows me to very quickly drag a completed encounter or quest up to the appropriate box here for the experience points. And in addition, it just makes it nice and convenient because I can just quickly glance over here. Oh, yep, that's my reference point, and go forward. In relation to the maps, you'll note that I have two maps up on the screen. The one on the left is the DM screen, and it's generally smaller and less definition on the map. Whereas the player's map is typically larger, although in this case I haven't totally zoomed in fully just yet. And I'll show you some of the movement options, if you will, here shortly. And the reason I do this is because sometimes the player map doesn't have these pins on it. And I actually think the pins are unique to Unity, because if I share this map over to the player screen and you look on the player side, you will not see those pins. So I think the Unity edition is now introducing some other technique to prevent that from being cross-shared. But I honestly can't recall. Anyway, just unshare that for now. In addition, I have my story tree here in the upper one, and I've gone through and moved all of the items for various things into placement here. And you'll note that I essentially have gone from story to quests, encounter, and parcels up in this upper part. The other tables, things like items, NPCs, the table, image of maps, and notes, and I also have notes up there, are all set up to pop up in this particular side of the screen. And I'm just going to go through and pop it down so that I have only the windows I need open. And I'm not sure why that was doing that, but every now and then a window gets stuck, and that might just be some glitches with Unity, and you have to pick it around and move it. On the right monitor, I have, and the bevel is literally just right in this spot here, so you'll see a bit of a gap. It's in between the 6 and the 7 on the quick key access. The next thing is the player map, and this is where you'll be moving player tokens, NPC tokens, trap tokens, stuff like that. You can very quickly click on a pin and open up a storyline, and as you can see, I haven't moved this over to this particular spot yet, and I might as well do that just now. Just 1 second here. Because of that, that is different. Prior to Unity, these weren't being included in the actual structure of the storyline, so this could require me to change my formatting a little bit here, but generally it's not going to do much to impact what I need to do right now. So, okay. As I can still get at the story if I need to and see a chunk of the map. In fact, let me just do this. Let's shrink that up and give my story tree a little bit more of a screen, and then open this up to match. Now I'm going to show you a little trick here. You'll note that this is still over here. That index is the primary chapter index for Mines of Phandelver. And you see these boxes here? They allow you to go back and forth very quickly between all of the chapter elements within a given chapter. But now, if I go here and I click on, let's say, running the adventure, and I open it, it'll pop up in the exact same spot. So when you use these two options here, once you've got one window placed in a chapter, you can very quickly cycle through all of the other elements in that particular chapter, and they will stick in that same spot. It will remember, Fantasy Grounds will remember where the window placement is. And if I close it and then I go back and reopen it, I can then just quickly go through and get to the screens that I need, or quickly directly open the screen I want. All right, and I generally put photos in the exact same spot, or pictures rather, in the exact same spot that I put my maps. And if you're unsure, you can actually share this stuff. So if you look on the player side right now, I don't know why that's there, but if you look on the player side right now, you will see that I just shared this picture over to the player side. And there's some options here that they have available to them. And you can very quickly stop sharing now. This stop share wasn't in the previous version of Fantasy Grounds, so that's a nice, convenient thing to have. Some other options that are available are with the toggle of this particular dropdown. So there are some very quick button options that are up here that you can make use of, and you literally just toggle that back and forth. And I haven't gotten into line of sight functionality yet because I haven't got a map that is available for line of sight. But technically, I could make this whole map line of sightable so that going into these trees, you can't really see anything. And as the party moves down the road here from Neverwinter, which is here, to Phandalin, which is here, it would uncover that section of the map as they go. But I honestly don't know if that is the case. Now, you'll saw that I went through and I resized this to fit to the screen. To zoom in, it's just your mouse wheel. And as you can see, you can zoom in quite a ways. I mean, to the point where there's really no detail left, which is different from the previous versions of Fantasy Grounds. And I like the fact that you can zoom in so close because you can really put in an encounter. It also depends on the size of the map. With the middle mouse button held down is what I'm using to move this particular mouse. And the reason for that, if I left click on this window, it moves the whole window. And I don't like when that happens, but that's how you move a window around, is you left click on it and drag it around. If you hold down the right mouse button, it will pop up your Radial Menu, and these are the various options and layers that you can go into. And some of these have subcategories. So there's a drawing subcategory. There's a pointers category, so you can draw boxes, squares, cones, remove a particular drawing, things like that. You can share the sheet, so what this does is it shares it over to the player screen. You can change the view so that it can be I don't think they've got the background functionality, but you can actually plop this so it's part of the background, so that it's always there. So it's like you have all of your stuff sitting on top of the map, but I'm not entirely certain whether that functionality is in place yet for Unity or not. It doesn't seem to be showing up here. But you can reset the zoom so that it's back to the default, if you will. Now, layers is where you can actually go through and set things up. So enable mask is where the whole thing gets grayed out on the player side. So if I share this, it's interesting that it's opening up with a right click each time on the player side. And I go into layers and I enable mask. Now, if you look over on the player screen, they can't see any of the detail on that map. And I do not believe this is what comes into play with line of sight. I think there's another feature that needs to be enabled on in order to deal with line of sight, and that's behind the locked tab. And if I delete the mask, then it uncovers the whole map once again from the player's perspective. All right. Another thing that can happen is you can set snap to grid on. Now, right now, I do not believe this map has a grid on it. These hexes are actually part of the raw source material. But you can actually go through and set up a grid. And you'll see the squares that are appearing in the background there. Those are what would actually be considered to be the grid. So when you drop an icon in there, it will snap to that particular grid, provided you have snapped grid on. However, with this map, it doesn't really make sense for a grid to be in place. So I'm just going to delete that grid, as it's not really applicable to this particular map, because you're probably going to be doing a bit of free movement around here. And what else? So there are some editing options that are now built into Unity. I am not going to cover all of the details here. And the reason why I am unlocking this is how you get at the line of sight functionality. So this is where you can turn on and turn off line of sight. So if I go and share this map again, players are now no longer able to see anything. But if I drop, I hate when I do that. Moving windows. I wish you could lock a window once it's placed. That would be a really nice feature. All right, so if I grab, let's say, don't need that, the token for Farron and drop him on here. Oh, come on. Is he on the map? He's not letting me drop him on the map. So world maps are now, it doesn't look like you can actually drop anything on this particular map. Might be just reference. But we'll get back to that when it comes to, oh, I know why. I'm an idiot. I could add that to here and then drop him onto there. There we go. Brain fart. All right. So if I turn line of sight back on, interesting. So if I delete, you'll see that on the player screen, the screen is black once again. But the minute I put somebody onto the map, because there is no line of sight definition on the player side map, it doesn't make sense to have it here, they can see the whole map. But the minute they leave that particular map or are removed from it, oops, I stopped sharing it. That's my apologies. I delete this token. They stop being able to see it. So this is how the line of sight functionality is going to come into play. But for this kind of map, it doesn't really make sense to have that on. I just wanted to show you that. As to any DM that's not sure how to get at it, that's how you get at it. All right, so I'm going to delete this item from here for now, because we're not ready with Combat Tracker. There's really no combat to go at this particular moment. All right, so with that in mind, I'm going to stop sharing again. I'm going to quickly move over to the player side. Now on the player screen, there are really 3 windows to 4 windows that you're going to want to make use of. And they're going to be the chat box, the combat tracker, the map or image or images or maps that the DM has shared out. And this is what this big empty square here is. You'll note that when I share this, it automatically defaults to the size of the DM screen, but not necessarily the shape. So placement is something that you have to do after the fact. And I typically will move it into a position like this because you can't shrink the combat tracker any further. And then I usually have my character sheet over here. And the reason for that is it allows me quick access to get at the actions, which you can still get at in some cases from the combat tracker, from a DM perspective anyway. But at the same time, if I pop up any reference material that I need, I have room down here to be able to make use of it. In addition, this dice tower is slightly inconveniently placed due to the fact that most of your functionality is over here. You can unlock it and move it, but I've had issues where it has not really stuck as to where I've moved it, so I typically just leave it there at this point. Hopefully that's going to get fixed in Unity or be applicable in Unity where you can actually move that around. You'll note, though, that on the DM side, that the DM does not have a combat tracker, or sorry, a dice tower, like the player does. And that's because of the option where I am not showing DM rolls anywhere. Only the player side gets the dice tower, and only the player will get it if the dice tower is actually physically enabled. So, I've already gone through and I've set up most of the stuff here on the DM side that I want. But when it comes to the player side, I left that in place as it defaulted to intentionally to show you how I did things on the DM side. So you'll note here that I have the chat window box a little bit more narrow, and I forgot to move that into place over here, give me a little bit more real estate. And where it's wider here, and the placement is a little offset. What you do is you unlock the position of it, and then you grab it to drag it around. And there's a bit of a sticky, so it can sometimes take a bit to pull it off the background or off the location that it's stuck into. And to simply simplify a few things here, I'm just going to shrink that. Now there's only so far you can shrink it. And then once you've got it in the position that you want, you can just lock the screen. Now what that does is that will allow me to open up the combat tracker again, move it over just a little bit further, and that will give me a little bit more in the way of real estate here for placement and all that jazz. Okay, and then when the map comes back over, then you just simply move the map into place, and there you go. All right. Now, these things are typically over here, but I tend to unlock them and move them. Come on. Lock position. Unity might not have the ability to drag this just yet. There we go. I typically put this next to the dice tower. In addition, I will typically move the dice. I didn't want to roll that. I don't know if you can move them in Unity yet. Yeah, see, it's automatically popping back up here. There's usually an option to unlock dice position where you can actually move them and lock it again. That hasn't been made available in Unity just yet. On the DM side, I will unlock the modifier window, and I will put that next to the combat tracker because I don't have a dice tower, so it doesn't make any sense for me to have it anywhere else. And then eventually, when I am able to move the dice, I will move them over here as well. Okay, so with that in mind, I'm going to pause here or stop here and get set up to actually run through the campaign, and I will start that in the next video. Once I've gone through a couple of things through the campaign and have actually shown you some of the reward experience, some of the encounter setups, potentially some of the maps, I'll post a question as to whether you wish me to continue with the campaign or not. But at the same time, I'm going to start going into greater depth on how to manipulate things. So something that you can do, as an example with the DM, is you can actually, they haven't got the functionality enabled in Unity yet, but on the Classic Edition, you can actually go through and while you're sharing, force a recentering of the screen so that the player screen updates to where you're looking at. Doesn't look like I can do that right at the moment, and it may be map dependent. I don't think it's in any of these particular options. If you're curious if there's line of sight on a map, you can toggle that, and it will. If you get a bunch of lines showing up, it will I don't need, come on, go away. No, anyway, I can reset that, so I don't need that. Anyway, so yeah, we'll come back in another video here and go through and actually start the campaign. Okay.